of America is always safer in the hands of the people than in the conference rooms of any elite.
Sam Seder.
They are unanimous in their hate for me, and I welcome their hatred.
We must guard against the acquisition of unwarranted influence, whether sought or unsought, by the military-industrial complex.
The Majority Report with Sam Seder.
Ever get the feeling you've been cheated?
It is Tuesday, August 3rd, 2021. My name is Sam Seder. This is the 5-time award-winning Majority Report. We are broadcasting live steps from the industrially ravaged Gowanus Canal in the heartland of America, downtown Brooklyn, USA. On the program today, Ross Barkan, writer of the Substack Political Currents by Ross Barkan, and author of The Prince, Andrew Cuomo, Coronavirus, and the Fall of New York. And not so coincidentally, New York State Attorney General's report. Andrew Cuomo sexually harassed multiple women, some who are still working in his office. Tried to retaliate against one for going public. Meanwhile, New York City will require proof of vaccination for most indoor activities, as Florida breaks the record for COVID infections. And Arkansas's hospitals are at full capacity. Meanwhile, Cori Bush still sleeping on the steps of the Capitol. Increasing pressure over the eviction moratorium as landlords rush to throw their tenants out. Lindsey Graham has breakthrough COVID, and he may have spread it on Joe Manchin's houseboat. Not The Onion. Preliminary National Labor Relations Board assessment. Amazon illegally discouraged votes during the Bessemer union drive. We have key special elections in Ohio today. Nina Turner's primary happening. Lastly, a new poll shows 65% of Texans support a federal vaccine mandate. All this and more on today's program. Welcome, ladies and gentlemen. Joined by Emma Vigeland. Emma, how are you? I'm a little tongue-tied this morning. I don't know what it is.
Happy Mon Tuesday to you.
Yes, exactly. Thank you. Happy Mon Tuesday.
And we should say thank you to Brendan for having some sort of premonition that this news about Cuomo would break today, because our guest is quite apt.
That's right.
He booked
we always nail it.
Ross for us today.
Yeah, we always nail it.
Right, always.
Always nail it.
Especially with the tech.
Yeah, more or less. More or less. So we're still in this sort of a weird period, trying to see where we're going to end up with both the so-called bipartisan infrastructure bill and the reconciliation. This has got to be wrapped up in the Senate, at least parts of it, by the end of next week. So we will start to see some more activity quite shortly. In the meantime, there's still massive fallout. And in fact, we're just beginning to see there's massive political fallout. We're just about on the precipice of seeing the material fallout of the Biden administration's bungling, at best, of the eviction moratorium. We went through all of the details yesterday in terms of how we got here. And there's a real sense now that the Biden White House is trying to bail water, but there are few options for them at the moment. Meanwhile, Cori Bush, one of the newest members of the House, certainly the newest member of the Justice Democrats, or one of them, I should say, has been literally camping out on the Capitol steps for 4 nights now.
Punchbowl opens their piece on this topic with Representative Cori Bush is winning.
And
what a sentence.
Right. And Punchbowl, we should just say, is this sort of like insidery,
right,
Politico type.
Although, I mean, I would imagine that she doesn't see herself as winning because the fact that she has to be in this position is something that should have been avoided altogether.
Absolutely. But she is bringing attention to this situation. And I guess, and you know, this is the dilemma that you have if you are a first term, you could argue a second term congressperson. She could have done this 3 weeks ago and no one would have paid attention to it. And they would have just been like, what is she doing? And it's useless and it's silly. And then the timing of it, and they would have been like, well, we're getting to it.
Right. But the outrage, I think, adds a little punch.
And the fact that the
PR
moratorium has expired,
right,
and we are now seeing all sorts of reports of both community organizations that help renters be inundated by phone calls yesterday, and courts getting slammed with legal filings to evict people. Here is Cori Bush on the steps of Capitol Hill yesterday.
No, not really. She, my whole point for going up to talk to her was, I wanted.
She is responding to a question about a conversation she had with the Vice President Kamala Harris. All right, continue.
No, not really. She, my whole point for going up to talk to her was, I wanted to look her in her face. I wanted her to look me in my face. I wanted her to see my eyes and to look down into my soul if she could see it. Because I don't want my people, I do not want the people of St. Louis ending up on the street because of policy choices, because of failed leadership, because of passing the buck. I need my people whole and I need my people safe. St. Louis deserves that, and not only St. Louis, but all across this country, people need that. And so that's what we did. I asked her, I said, look me, I said, I need you to see my eyes. You know, my people cannot be put out on the street, you know, and she nodded, you know, and she, you know, told me to take care of myself, and you know, she's working. Yeah, she said they're working, and I do believe.
Well, she's got to say that.
I guess we'll see. That you don't know, you don't believe that she doesn't believe, or
you know what doesn't constitute. No. I mean, I don't believe Kamala Harris. You know what doesn't constitute working? Like, say you're in class and you do a class project, or you have an assignment that's due on a Friday and then you realize you didn't do it and then you scramble over the weekend to put it together to bring it in on Monday. Like, that doesn't necessarily constitute that you've been working on that project.
And
because
one could
it's
also
already
argue,
been due. It's
right,
already been due, and everyone else has been graded. This, like,
if you're trying to get your folks to send in a note saying that you were sick,
well,
and that's why you didn't get it done, that's also working.
That's we've all tried that, but I don't think that necessarily applies in this case.
Well, I don't know. Here's Gene Sperling, basically doing. He is the one of the White House on the economic team. Here he is, basically doing that, trying to assure the press that something's going to happen.
Given the rising urgency of the spread of the Delta variant, the president has asked all of us, including the CDC, to do everything in our power to look for every potential legal authority we can have to prevent evictions.
Yeah. Now, the problem is, of course, he then goes on to say basically like, let the states need to figure this out. They knew what the plan was weeks ago. They just made a decision to just blow it off. We know that honestly.
They don't want to do anything.
They don't want to do
anything
was
with foreign policy or this.
No, there were people in there who wanted to extend it, according to the reporting. White House lawyers said that if you do that, you risk the Supreme Court rolling things back even more. Now, we mentioned that with Diane yesterday. You can be skeptical or not skeptical as to those legal assessments. But if that was the assessment, then they should have brought this up with Congress 3 or 4 weeks ago.
But were they going to go back in time? They could do what the Republicans do. Do it anyway, and if it gets challenged at the Supreme Court, you buy extra weeks and months for the people who are getting evicted right now. Okay, you say the conditions of the pandemic have changed. Fine, that's like the justification that they need to ensure people have housing. Okay, we don't want to spread COVID because we're worried about the economy. Great, that's like their neoliberal justification. Fine. Use that, allow the CDC to extend the moratorium, and then deal with it down the line. The Supreme Court can't go back in time and then evict people in the months that this protected them. It's such BS. They just are scrambling at the last minute because they want to kick the can down the road, and now they're getting blowback from it, and they don't want to deal with it, which is one of the through lines of this administration thus far.
All right, well, we got to take a quick break. When we come back, we're going to talk to Ross Barkan about the prince. That would be, of course, Andrew Cuomo. In the meantime, today's program is sponsored in part by Native Deodorant. Well, actually, they got a whole line of products now at nativedeo.com/Majority Report. Did I mention the other day, like, what's happening with Miles' birthday on the air?
I don't know if you did on the air.
Okay. Well, the long and short of it is I'm hosting a bunch of her friends at my house overnight for 2 nights. And I'm terrified. The anxiety is amazing because there's such a mass of people in a small place.
Yeah, and they're teens.
Literally the one thing that she said was, could you get more of that native body wash? The lime and sugar.
Only the best for her
I'm like,
friends.
wait, that's it.
Okay.
Well, I handle everything else, but that was the only specific requirement that she had.
Right.
She loves it. Sometimes life stinks. But of course you don't have to, because Native has your back. Native cares about the products you put on your body. They're all about stopping the stink the right way. I've spoken in the past about Native's legendary aluminum-free deodorant and how for a long time, extended period of time in my life, I did not use deodorant because I did not want stuff like aluminum and all the garbage that's in there seeping into my body. But Native has none of that. They also have body wash, toothpaste, and their brand new mineral-based sunscreen. Native's broad spectrum SPF 30 sunscreen is lightweight, absorbs quickly, and you can choose between unscented or coconut and pineapple. I will tell you, I've also had good results with this and putting it on Saul's face without him getting really, really whiny. He gets whiny, but not really, really whiny because it's not greasy.
I've got to get this because I think that might have been what caused my sty.
Oh, really?
I use that spray on my eyelids, the cheap stuff from CVS. No, so there you go.
You can get their deodorant and their body wash in amazing scents like coconut and vanilla, citrus herbal musk, lavender and rose, and of course the lime and sugar. That is apparently the favorite of my daughter. You can even build your own personalized product bundles. You can mix and match 3 of your favorite scents. You keep them on rotation. You have something for every occasion. Check it out. Stay fresh, stay clean with Native by going to nativedeo.com/Majority Report or use the promo code Majority Report at checkout and you get 20% off your first order. That's nativedeo.com/Majority Report or use the promo code Majority Report at checkout for 20% off your first order. Also, today's program sponsored in part by ExpressVPN. Why would you want ExpressVPN? Well, Using the internet without ExpressVPN is like driving without having any car insurance. Why would you take the risk? I just did a long interview actually with fascinating story about the tremendous amount of fraud coming from international crime rings on unemployment. I think this came up a little bit with Dan. I'm not quite sure if it did yesterday, but and part of it is because they have stolen people's information from online. And it makes it much easier for them to do this. Every time you connect to an encrypted network, whether it's at a cafe or a hotel or airport, or, they've got them around the city now, any hacker on the same network can gain access to your personal data. Maybe it's your passwords, maybe it's your financial details. They find the password to your email, and then they start going to different accounts to see if that's the formula that gets them in. Doesn't take much technical knowledge to hack somebody, just some cheap hardware. Honestly, a 12-year-old could do it. Certainly with this generation. Hackers can make up to $1,000 per person selling personal info on the dark web. That was also part of that story. Apparently, a lot of that was happening on Telegram. They would set up these sort of forums where they would sell, like, here's how you get a fake unemployment, and I can sell you the personal data that you can use. ExpressVPN acts as an online insurance, basically, for you. Creates secure, encrypted tunnel between your device and the internet so hackers can't steal your personal data. It'd take a hacker with a supercomputer over 1 billion years to get past ExpressVPN's encryption. And by that time, you're so old, you don't
care.
ExpressVPN is simple to use on all your devices. You just fire up the app, and seriously, this takes one click of one button, and you're protected. Secure your online data today by visiting expressvpn.com/majority. That's expressvpn.com/majority. You can get an extra 3 months free. expressvpn.com/majority. And lastly, as soon as I saw this, it almost broke my heart because I was hungry this morning, and I realized we have run out of Magic Spoon, which is my way of saying this final sponsor on today's program, Magic Spoon. Everybody's trying to eat better, but a healthy breakfast does not have to taste like cardboard and be boring. Magic Spoon has the amazing flavors you love, but without all the bad stuff. Yes, folks, Magic Spoon cereal has 0 grams of sugar, has 13 to 14 grams of protein, only 4 net grams of carbs, and 140 calories in each serving. It is keto-friendly. It is gluten-free. It is grain-free. It is soy-free. It is low-carb, and it's delicious. You can build your own box, send it 4 at a time, or you can get a variety pack with available flavors like cocoa, fruity, frosted, peanut butter, blueberry, and the Sam Seder favorite, cinnamon. Magic Spoon is bringing back 2 popular flavors, too, cookies and cream and maple waffle, permanently, much to the applause of my children, who are huge cookies and creams fanatics. I would also like to vote, because I know these guys listen to the ads sometimes, for a full-time peanut butter and cocoa, because that mix, I've mixed them together myself, but when they mix it, somehow they find the perfect...
peanut butter and chocolate can't go wrong.
Exactly. Folks, do yourself a favor. Go to magicspoon.com/majority report. Grab your delicious cereal and try it today. Be sure to use the promo code Majority Report at checkout, and you'll save $5 off your order. Magic Spoon is so confident in their product, it is backed with a 100% happiness guarantee. So if you don't like it for any reason, they'll refund your money, no questions asked. Remember, get your next delicious bowl of guilt-free cereal at magicspoon.com/majority report and use the code Majority Report to save $5 off. Thank you, Magic Spoon, for sponsoring this episode and my tomorrow's breakfast. I'm not going to make the mistake 2 days in a row. All right. Want to welcome to the program Ross Barkan. He is the proprietor and writer at Substack Political Currents by Ross Barkan, and author of this book, which just came out, The Prince, Andrew Cuomo, Coronavirus and the Fall of New York. Ross, I'm here with Emma Vigeland. Welcome. I imagine you're going to be a little busy today.
Yes, breaking news, long anticipated news. So yes, I'm catching up as we speak, and digesting it along with everyone else. So yes, this is definitely a very important day for the state of New York, and for millions of people, arguably.
Yeah, it's absolutely. I mean, this report seems pretty stunning, and we should remind people, right, that Andrew Cuomo wanted this investigation. I mean, or at least publicly said he did.
Well, yes. I mean, publicly he said that. I mean, privately he'd prefer no accountability of any kind. So publicly, yes, he called for due process, which is fair. I support due process personally, and there are people calling for him to resign out of the gate based on the sexual harassment allegations. And I think there was an argument that let the investigation play out, let the investigators do their job, and let's see what they find. And today is that day. And what we've seen so far, and my caveat is I haven't had a chance to read the 165 pages in total. I've looked at some of it. I've covered it and read the press reports and everything. It substantiates basically everything. You have multiple sexual harassment allegations that were substantiated, physical touching in addition to lewd comments. James and her investigators were very pointed about the culture that Cuomo facilitated and possible violations of state and federal law in terms of both the harassing and also how the complaints were handled and the retaliation that apparently went into this, which again, none of this is a surprise if you followed Cuomo, been following this to any degree. It just confirms what many of us suspected, and now we will see what happens next, and a few different things can happen.
Is it accurate that there's a recommendation for criminal prosecution in one of the incidents?
It's actually a good question. There could be. I'd have to double check on that. I'm still getting caught up myself on that. I don't know for certain if this will turn into something criminal. That would be the next step with all of this. So I'm still trying to pin down those facts myself, since this all just broke a little over really less than an hour ago.
Right.
So we're all digesting it as we speak.
All right, we're at the end, we're going to swing back around to where you think. What do you think Cuomo is going to end up doing based upon how well you understand this guy from?
Sure.
But let's go back, and how did Andrew Cuomo get here, as it were? And by here, I mean, let's say 2 hours ago.
Sure.
Because he's got quite it's right there. It's the prince, right? And so I guess his story starts almost with, I guess, the king.
Yeah, so are we talking about getting here in terms of his political career or in terms of the harassment allegations?
No,
all the way back.
I mean, let's go all the way back.
All the way back. Oh, sure. So
yeah,
I chose the title for my book, The Prince, in part because Andrew Cuomo is very Machiavellian, and also in that he is something of a literal prince because his father was a 3-term governor of New York, and in certain circles was very popular. Something I talk about in my book is that from a left perspective, Mario is very much overrated and really didn't accomplish very much, and actually was a low key opponent of the left in New York State, which is something that doesn't really get talked about a whole lot. But in my research, I found Mario, like Andrew, would thwart the ambitions of Democrats in the state legislature who are hoping to then take over the state Senate, which would not happen for decades later. So Andrew learns from Mario. Mario becomes governor in '82. Andrew is working for him right out of the gate. Mario ran for mayor in 1977 and nearly won against Ed Koch. Andrew Cuomo at that point was, just out of it, about 19 years old, working on that campaign. So he's someone who's steeped in politics. He's steeped in city and state politics, really learned at his father's knee, and was something of an enforcer for his father. Again, Mario had this reputation as a florid, intellectual, liberal, and behind the scenes, he was not so much that. And Andrew was really the one who was making the phone calls, making the threats, whipping legislators, telling, the county executives or whoever that you better get in line with Mario's agenda or something bad is going to happen. So that's really those are really Andrew's formative years, are learning in the Mario Cuomo government. Mario was governor for 12 years. He ran for a fourth term, was defeated by a Republican, George Pataki, and that really bothered Andrew and haunted him in some sense. And he was always looking for vindication. And he tried to run against George Pataki in 2002. He dropped out of the Democratic primary to face Pataki, who was a Republican. The campaign was quite disastrous, and it appeared his political career might be over. I should add, too, thanks to Mario's connections, Andrew also served for a time as HUD secretary in the 1990s under Bill Clinton. So in his 30s, he already was leading a major federal agency, and that would not have been possible without his father, who was close to Bill Clinton. So he's HUD secretary, failed gubernatorial candidate, but he really revives himself in 2006. He runs for state attorney general, now the post that Letitia James has. He wins attorney general. It appears he's going to be stuck behind Eliot Spitzer for a long time. Spitzer, of course, has his prostitution scandal, has to resign. And then Cuomo is off to the races from there. The lieutenant governor who took over, David Paterson, was pretty weak and feckless in many ways. It was only a matter of time before Andrew Cuomo pushed him aside, which he did, and really forced Paterson to not run again with the threat of a primary. And then Andrew Cuomo becomes governor in 2010, wins in 2010. And here we are, a decade later, he is still governor of New York.
All right. So a couple of things I want to just go back and I don't know if people, appreciate this about Mario Cuomo. He was very literary, and he gave, the modern post runner, I guess, if I would be, Obama's 2004 speech. Mm-hmm. Cuomo gave a version of that at the DNC in the 80s. I think it was 84. Yeah, I think it was 84. And there was a big push. People wanted him to run for president. And it was a huge, year-long thing. Will he or won't he? Mario Cuomo, really built. I mean, it's interesting because and like you say, the only thing that Cuomo did really in his tenure of governor in this state was to build a lot of prisons.
Yes,
for the most part. But yet he was able to cultivate this image, not too dissimilar, I think, in the way that Andrew Cuomo did over the past, during that first, 6 months or so of COVID. What's also interesting is that they didn't have a particularly good relationship, even though Andrew was sort of like his, enforcer there, right? I mean, to the extent that you've done any reporting on that, I'm curious about that dynamic, because I just remember during, I think it was Andrew Cuomo's birthday, they went to Mario and said, "Do you want to shoot a video for his birthday?" And he was like, nah, I'm good. And that story came out publicly, which I thought was weird.
It was a complicated relationship. They were close, but in some ways there was this tension, almost like they were rivals. And if you read, I had the misfortune of reading not one, but two Andrew Cuomo memoirs. And the thing that strikes you in really both of them is that Andrew can be quite critical of Mario. In Andrew's eyes, Mario was that feckless liberal who didn't get anything done and really was more about rhetoric than action. And Andrew vowed when he was governor, he was going to have concrete accomplishments and really have a much stronger hold on the politics of the state. Mario was much more of a national figure than Andrew Cuomo was until COVID. Before COVID, remember, Andrew Cuomo had middling approval ratings. He was not popular or well-known nationally. He was really not a serious presidential contender or floated as one. 2016, there are a few people going, oh, would Andrew Cuomo run? But really it was Hillary Clinton's race, and then Bernie ran. There's really not really a space for Andrew in that race. Unlike Mario, which, as you said, Mario was a major figure in the National Party, was really beloved by a lot of liberals around the country, never ran for president. Many people wanted him to. And of course, it was a darker time for liberalism, and the pickings were slim, right? So it was Mario Cuomo, or who exactly, right? Mike Dukakis, Gary Hart, there's not a cornucopia of like great liberal figures at the time. So, Mario benefited from that. But Andrew's read on Mario was that, well-intentioned, but did not deliver. And this was really an obsession of Andrew Cuomo. Though I think as governor, he has been much more incompetent than the media narrative would suggest. But I will say, in the defense of Andrew Cuomo, he has more concrete accomplishments than his father, who really had none other than building prisons. Quite literally, that's the only physical manifestation of 12 years of Mario Cuomo's governor. There's no great legislation. There were no great social safety net programs that were created. There were no really schools built of any kind, I think some additions to the thruway, things like that, not much. So Andrew looks at Mario and sees something of a failure and says, I will do better. And part of this obsession with doing better is being a 4-term governor. And we come back to today in the sexual harassment allegations. And I just said this, I've said this before, a normal governor in a instance like this, where they've clearly been accused and now we have substantiated evidence, a normal governor would say, well, I've been governor for almost 12 years now. I won't run for re-election next year. Maybe I won't step aside, but my time has come. I'm going to serve out my term and leave. Andrew Cuomo is not a normal governor. He is obsessed with getting the 4th term because his father could not get the 4th term. There's only been one 4-term governor in New York State history, Nelson Rockefeller, and Andrew has always wanted to surpass his father and be like a Rockefeller, be like a Robert Moses, sort of a larger than life figure in the state. And I think he's still thinking this way. We'll see what he says later today.
Or
but I think he's still thinking this way.
Or he could just go to therapy. That would save us all a lot of hurt in this instance.
Could, but he's in his 60s now. I think that the ship has sailed on introspection.
I guess
that's probably true.
It seems that way, right?
Well, all right. So he goes to HUD. He's at HUD actually almost for a decade, but not as necessarily as the. I mean, he's at HUD for a while, right? And
yeah, he was He was the head of HUD for several years in the 90s.
Yeah. And so let's go to how, because I want to lead up into how he was governing, because he got away by just sort of keeping his head under the radar. I mean, he was really, in many respects, it seems to me, for his first 2 terms, running like a guy who thinks it's 1993 and trying to avoid having to sign any piece of legislation that is in any way progressive. And we've talked about it quite a bit on this show, but very briefly, just recap, the IDC, but also he was cutting taxes massively for corporations and for wealthy people, had a whole scheme, I think this was about 8 years ago now, for property taxes. That would have helped wealthy towns, hurt poorer towns, essentially. Give a sense of his record and in the context also of austerity, because that leads up to some of the problems that we have during COVID.
Sure. So when Andrew Cuomo became governor, he was even more conservative and triangulating than he is now. Andrew Cuomo really ran and won as a 1980s, 1990s style third way Clintonian Democrat. In every sense, he was anti-labor. He was strongly against raising taxes on the wealthy, very supportive of Republicans having power in the state. He, for most of his tenure, helped Republicans control the state Senate. Democrats did not win a full majority. Now they have a super majority until 2019. So Andrew Cuomo becomes governor in 2011. And what he did was, after the Obama election in 2012, Democrats had the numbers to take the majority in the state Senate. He encouraged and helped push and form this group, the Independent Democratic Conference, that in 2013 they'd already been broken away from the main Democratic Conference, but he encouraged them to form an unprecedented power sharing agreement with the Republicans. So the majority in the state Senate was Republicans and IDC. And the IDC are these conservative, corporate Democrats who together with the Republicans formed a majority and locked out the mainstream Democrats from the majority. So what this meant was that in every single budget, every time a bill came to the floor or someone tried to get a bill to the floor, the Republicans would have a say. And so while the Republicans couldn't get their own bills through, generally speaking, because the Democrats still controlled the lower house, the state assembly, what the Republicans could always do was stop progressive legislation, stop bills that would help undocumented immigrants, increase funding for public education, bills to protect abortion rights, bills, I would say, as important as any, to strengthen tenant protections in the state. Again and again, the Republicans could bottle up and block these bills. And someone like Andrew Cuomo very cynically could say, well, I wanted to get this done, but the Republicans won't do it, so not my problem. And he was able to get away with it for a very long time. I mean, this was the reality of New York State, this weird dysfunction and gridlock throughout the 2010s, really until the numbers didn't support it anymore and progressives took it upon themselves to primary the IDC. There were 8 members of the IDC, 6 of them were beaten in primaries in 2018, and that turned the tide. And finally, in 2019, you got this full Democratic majority, and it grew again after the 2020 elections. And this is not what Cuomo wanted. He did not want a large left of center majority in the state Senate. And just quickly, sort of on now his current predicament with the sexual harassment allegations, if the assembly brings the impeachment, which like in Congress, the lower house has to impeach, the Senate convicts, Andrew Cuomo probably does not have the votes in the Senate to survive, I would say, as of right now, if those impeachment allegations get brought, because you have a lot of progressive Democrats who don't like him, and you've got Republicans who'd probably vote to convict too. So he's in a tough place if that impeachment starts. So we can talk about that.
Yes, I want to, and I just also want to cite, the hand of who I refer to as Governor Nixon in helping defeat the IDC, because it really did. I mean, to the extent that there are any progressive accomplishments by Andrew Cuomo, they came out of a concern. First, you had Zephyr Teachout take about 35% from him in a Democratic primary, which was embarrassing to him. I mean, this is a guy who, like you say, he's had deep presidential ambitions. He wants to do what his dad didn't do, and you cannot get less than 60% or 65 or 70% if you're going to be a popular governor who's going to run nationally in a blue state.
With an enormous fundraising disparity, New York has probably the worst campaign finance laws in America, and an incumbent governor or someone running for governor can take a check from a single donor, I think as large as $50,000. It's something bonkers like that. So Cuomo has these huge war chests. Even now he's got $19 million. And
that's
he aren't in danger if he's raising more right now. And then Zephyr still got, about 35% with really less than $1 million. And he was just allowing.
And that, I think that was a big concern for Cuomo, and he really wanted to make sure that Cynthia Nixon would not get anywhere near there. And I think we saw a dramatic change. She also really honed in on the IDC and brought that to the attention of people in a way that most people hadn't been aware of, I think. And so we should just say that. And so And part of it was also the Moreland Commission, which was an independent commission set up to investigate corruption in the state. And as soon as they started coming closer to Andrew Cuomo, he disbanded them. Maybe I want to ask this question. I'll put a pin in it. But like, how has he gotten away with this on some level, like this level of corruption? But take us to what he did with the public hospitals, because I want to get to specifically to COVID, and then we can get to the sort of the whole media allure around him.
So since the 1990s, there's been this real concerted push to close hospitals in New York State. Some of that is general healthcare trends of consolidation. Some of that is the profit-seeking motive of healthcare, where public hospitals are something like the ugly stepchildren of healthcare because they serve poor people and they don't make money and they're not profitable, right? They are frontline hospitals that help the most vulnerable people in society, the undocumented immigrants and the poor, right? So wealthy people and wealthy interests and, the private hospital lobby, which is very powerful in New York State and very close to the governor, is not so fond of these public hospitals that require a lot, that take these Medicaid patients and are not able to turn a profit because they take care of the poor and the sick. So under George Pataki, a Republican, there was this big push to close a lot of hospitals and cut Medicaid spending. Andrew Cuomo comes in and really continues that. He's very enthusiastic about cutting Medicaid spending. One of his first acts as governor is to find a way to cut Medicaid spending. He was not able to close as many hospitals as Pataki did, but there were a few key hospitals he shut down. That in turn probably could have helped when the pandemic first hit in March of last year. I think of particularly in the Rockaway Peninsula. If people are familiar with Queens, there's a little peninsula out there, and part of it is quite poor and working class. They used to have 2 hospitals. Andrew Cuomo closed one of their hospitals. Now they're down to 1. And the Rockaways was extremely hard hit by COVID in those first 2 months. And a lot of people got sick and died, and the hospital there was overwhelmed. Queens itself, which was an epicenter of the pandemic in those early days, was once a place where there were a lot of hospitals, public and private, and that number just consistently shrank. So Cuomo was not alone in pushing to close hospitals and cut Medicaid spending, but it's a task he took on with enthusiasm once he was governor. And then during the pandemic, he was still trying to cut Medicaid spending to public hospitals, which was something he was trying to do before the pandemic. And he did not change course once COVID was ripping through New York, and it really took a concerted push in the state legislature to stop him from doing that. So, he's always been sort of obsessed with reining in Medicaid spending in the state, and he still is to an extent. It's just there's been pushback of late.
And you can see in the data, your chances of surviving COVID are at least in those first couple of months was directly related to the nature of the hospital that you're headed to. I'm talking in the context of New York. It's all there in the data. Talk about what you think he did wrong in those first couple of months regarding COVID. And this is, there may not be a great example of people who did everything right, but New York, it seems to me, if I'm governor of New York, I'm aware of the fact that New York is not, let's say, Omaha, or it's not even Baltimore. There's a couple of places in America where if there's going to be a pathogen that is somewhere else, New York is going to be one of the first places that is going to get it because of the nature of the city.
Andrew Cuomo did really 2 things very wrong in those early days, which I talk about a lot in my book, The Prince. The first is downplay the threat of COVID. And this really got memory hold because people associate this solely with Donald Trump. But in February and March of 2020, Andrew Cuomo was comparing COVID to the flu. He was saying that Ebola and SARS were bigger threats. He was saying that the fear was worse than the virus. And he generally was creating this sense of complacency that should not have existed. And as late as mid-March of 2020, he was still likening it to the flu, very much like Republicans and Donald Trump. He was saying, too, that if we test more, we'll see more COVID, and that's why we're seeing more, and there's not really much to worry about. So for a long time, he was really downplaying the virus as it was spreading, and this really was forgotten. And the second part was, he resisted a full shutdown of New York City and New York State, largely because Bill de Blasio suggested it first. Bill de Blasio certainly shares blame in the COVID deaths in New York. To date, New York has the second highest death toll, second highest death per capita in America. So it shows you how horrible it was in those early months that even after all this, New York is still a national leader in that category. And so what happened was in California, in Northern California in particular, there was a successful push in around mid-March to have a coordinated shutdown of the counties around San Francisco and including San Francisco. And Bill de Blasio himself said on around March 17th, it's going to be time for New York City to shut down too. Bill de Blasio didn't have the authority to do this. By this point, all the emergency powers were with the governor. It was Cuomo who could decide when a locality could shut down or not. And he goes on TV and says, nope, we're not going to do that. We can't do a shutdown for New York City. We would have to shut down everywhere, and this is just not going to be done. And really, he resisted the idea, I believe, because he didn't want to be seen as following the mayor in anything. But 5 days later, New York does announce a shutdown order, which he rebranded New York Pause. So by then, it's around March 22nd or so. COVID has been tearing through the city and state, and a lot of people are getting sick and dying. And you can look at studies from Columbia University and other places that, the sooner you shut down, the sooner you can save lives. Remember, this is well before a vaccine or anything. And the fact that New York took so long to shut down was probably one of the reasons that so many people got sick and died. So I don't blame all of COVID on Cuomo, all deaths on Cuomo. A lot of Republicans do that. I think that's a bit simplistic. COVID was very hard to deal with, just as I think it's simplistic to only blame Donald Trump for COVID. You see it across the world. It's a very tough virus. That being said, Cuomo does not really deserve very much credit because so many people died. It's in the numbers. There's really no way to praise his response when you see 50,000 deaths statewide.
Walk us through the issue of the nursing homes. He decided to basically send patients to nursing homes. There was not, when you cut that many hospitals, you don't have, excess capacity for the event of something like this. So he decided to use nursing homes. Talk about that decision. But also more, I think, to the point is the decision to cover up that decision, essentially the implications of that decision.
Sure. So there's two parts to it. There was a very controversial directive in March of 2020, as you said, which ordered hospitals to discharge COVID positive patients back to nursing homes where they had come from. And this probably led to the spread of COVID in nursing homes even more so. And Cuomo said he did this because of a fear of a lack of capacity, which was understandable and defensible. But New York had, by this point, set up a lot of these large facilities that went unused that were supposed to handle COVID patients at the Jacob Javits Center in Manhattan, the Tennis Center in Queens. These went largely unfilled. So you could have put COVID patients there from hospitals, but this was not done. Instead, they were sent back to the nursing homes, and the virus obviously was spreading there and killing people. I'll say in Cuomo's defense, this directive was not the sole cause of the COVID problem in nursing homes. The problem was really a challenge for many states and many cities. No one did handle nursing homes well. There was a lack of PPE, a lack of organization. But the bigger issue, I would say, where the cover up is as much a problem as the crime, and this is sort of where you have your Watergate parallels. Andrew Cuomo and his health department, for reasons that were unclear at the time, and I think now were purely done to depress the death toll in nursing homes, would not count people who got sick in nursing homes and were transferred to hospitals to die as nursing home deaths. You only counted a nursing home death if they literally died in the nursing home, not if they were a resident for 20 years and got sick and happened to be moved in an ambulance to a hospital. That was not a nursing home death. So what you had is the raw death toll for the state was not impacted, but what you had was this distorted picture of, oh, there's only been, let's say, 1,000 deaths in nursing homes in New York State. I'm making up a number there. When in fact there had been 5,000, 10,000 deaths, right? So the real problem was you had a mishandling, an intentional mishandling of data, and you'd many people in the state legislature, journalists, think tanks demanding the full nursing home death total. He didn't give it until this year when the Attorney General of New York State put out a report and said Cuomo had been distorting and downplaying nursing home deaths. And overnight, the death toll was revised and increased by 50%, I think, in a day or two. And the number went steadily upward as these deaths were counted properly. And the other part of this, and there's a lot to keep track of, I know, was for a long time, nursing homes and hospitals had full legal immunity thanks to the healthcare lobby. And this was inserted into the budget the last minute a year ago, was partially repealed eventually, but was really the strongest, maybe the strongest immunity shield in America, something Mitch McConnell hoped to put into place in Washington. It could not get it, but we got it in New York.
And that part seems to be the real key here, is that this was not just simply an aesthetic decision of like, we don't want people to feel bad about nursing homes. It was there. I believe that Cuomo's people thought this is going to create a potential political force for responsibility for not just the decision, but also liability for these facilities. And the lobby, I suspect it was a function of the lobby basically saying, like, we can't have this type of publicity when we're looking to make sure that we don't have a direct, that we want a shield of liability.
The hospital lobby wrote the immunity shield. The lobbyists literally put that shield together and had Cuomo get it into the budget last year. So that was a very concerted push on the part of the hospital lobby. And yes, it's in part, it made these facilities, these healthcare facilities, into dumping grounds for COVID patients, right? If you don't fear lawsuits, you feel you can do whatever it is you please. That's a big problem. One of the problems with the immunity shield too was it was so far reaching, it was covering regular non-COVID medical malpractice lawsuits. So if you had a medical malpractice issue in March or April, I think of May of last year, you could not sue. So you can imagine what a boon this was to the healthcare lobby to have this magic immunity shield that covered almost everything. It was really remarkable and terrifying to think about. And it was at the behest of healthcare executives in the state, hospital executives, and of course of Andrew Cuomo and his staff, who got it into the budget. You can blame the state legislature too for not fighting back harder at the time. And that was a big part of this. So, you had this striking immunity shield that was protecting a lot of people who are handling the lives of loved ones and perhaps mishandling them. And these families had no legal recourse.
And we should say there's a long history of Cuomo. I mean, the first thing that comes to mind is, Ken Langone visits Cuomo's office, and then within days, it's all about charter schools. For Cuomo, he just adopted this new pet project of increasing charter schools in the state, which also just coincidentally also happened to be Ken Langone's pet project. And so there's this really explicit, it seems to me, relationship between donors' wishes and Andrew Cuomo's that is like particularly naked, it feels like, on some level.
That might have informed his decision to end the corruption investigation a bit early.
That also might have informed, the Moreland Commission. All right, well, so just, very briefly, let just touch on this thing with de Blasio and the implications of it. And then let's go into, how is it that he's been able to go 3 terms with the vast majority of New Yorkers seeming oblivious to how bad this guy is? And there is a decent cohort of Republicans out there that hate him because of that one gun control measure.
Right. So the question is, how has he been able to survive so long?
Well, it's not just survive. And
maintain his popularity.
Yeah, I think you could say Cuomo got a C or a C- in terms of COVID, but his grade from so many people is an A. That's an extraordinary feat, it seems to me.
Yeah, so you have a few different factors at play. One is purely why has he been able to be governor for a decade? And I blame New York's horrendous campaign finance laws on that. Cuomo has never faced a primary or general election where his opponent had anywhere near the amount of money he did. No one has been able to ever spend on parity with Cuomo, and that's whether it's Cynthia Nixon, Zephyr Teachout, his Republican opponents, because a candidate for statewide office can accept tens of thousands of dollars per donor and also take LLC and corporate money quite easily. It gives Cuomo a tremendous leg up over rivals because every single special interest in the state wants to funnel tons of money to Cuomo. So he's reaping hundreds of thousands and millions of dollars from the real estate lobby, or from the finance lobby, from every single special interest that is any business before the state is giving to Cuomo. So he spent $27 million to beat Cynthia Nixon, who I think spent 2, maybe. That's you're not going to ever win a race spending 2 against 27 statewide, right? Where you can pound the airwaves, pound TV, radio, you name it, with constant ads. So you start there. Cuomo has never been challenged. Why did he maintain popularity? Pre-COVID, the truth was the governor of New York always got a lot less scrutiny than the mayor of New York City. A lot of the media is based in New York City. This has always been my theory, that being in Albany allows you to really hide from view. Andrew Cuomo's top aide, Joe Percoco, was convicted of, on corruption charges and went to prison for a long time. This didn't really make much of a dent in Cuomo's popularity. And I think that's in part because being in Albany, which is a few hours north of the city and where the media is a bit smaller, it really can give you some cover. And I think if Cuomo had been the mayor of New York City and his top aide had gone to prison, it'd be a very different story. So that was sort of the pre-COVID rationale. And then why was he popular during COVID? I blame the media for a lot of it. Obviously, regular people were scared. They were desperate for a foil to Trump. They were desperate for someone to fill the void with facts and some degree of reason. And Trump was so terrible. Andrew Cuomo was there to be a source of comfort. I think if Joe Biden had been president during COVID last year, Andrew Cuomo would not have been so popular. I really believe a lot of it was the Trump effect and this feeling that someone had to stand up to him. And even today, when you talk to people and you explain, well, Cuomo was bad during COVID, but we needed him then because look at what Trump was doing. And they'll just cite 10 things Trump did. So yeah, Trump. And then the media deserves blame. Prestige television stations, CNN, MSNBC. CNN has Chris Cuomo doing softball interviews with Andrew Cuomo.
Ross, let me ask this. Do you think it's helpful to have your brother be one of the lead anchors on a national cable television and have you on for interviews that you know, they're the most challenging thing is like you're the guy who left the cap off the
And the
toothpaste.
response is, I'm going to give you a wet willy.
Right.
Right.
I mean, that.
I think it helps. Yeah, I think it's a plus to have Chris Cuomo in prime time making weird jokes with you as tens of thousands of people die in hospitals. Yes.
Also, I mean, like as you say, during that time, people, I guess, forget they were just airing his press conferences from start to finish because, as you say, like the reason the bar was so low was because Trump was not providing any adequate information and there was mass panic. And so all you had to provide were facts and figures and some sense of, understanding of pandemics, baseline. And that's all that was necessary for him to cash in on this multi-million-dollar book deal or whatever the case is.
One man was talking about drinking bleach and the other had PowerPoints, and people went, oh my God, a PowerPoint. Wow. And people, look, I don't blame ordinary people. I blame the media. Ordinary people were scared. You're sitting at home. You don't know what the heck's going on. We remember those days very well. You are down a rabbit hole of television and social media. That's your world. And here comes Andrew Cuomo into a world, this tough talking guy, also from Queens like Trump, but very different demeanor, has gravitas, has a sense of seriousness about him, which Donald Trump never did. And that was attractive. It didn't matter because tons of people died, but it was attractive. But then I blame the media because there was so much unnecessary softball coverage. He was on the cover of multiple national magazines. Melissa DeRosa's top aide, who could end up in prison one day for all we know at this point. She was on the cover of Harper's Bazaar. The amount of really over the top coverage of Cuomo and his staff, really contributed to this narrative that he was a hero. He was the COVID conqueror, and he wasn't. COVID was not conquered. Many, many people died, and it was a mass tragedy. The likes New York has never seen before, and I hope never sees again.
All right, Ross, we just have about a minute or so left here. What do you think happens here? He's going to try and ride this out, and it's an up in the air question as to whether he tries to run again.
Yeah, there are a few roads. Cuomo still has $19 million in the bank. So he's going to look at that amount of money and say, my primary is in June of 2022. I'll ride it out. Come get me. And that's the type of politician he is. Here's where it gets tough for him. The state assembly has the power to impeach him. They've been very scared of doing this. They're a cautious, more moderate body that has not wanted to move against him. Now the report is out. It's quite graphic. There may be a real push to impeach. If that push is significant, Cuomo is in deep, deep trouble because unlike the US Senate, there are votes in the New York State Senate to convict Andrew Cuomo in a trial. There never were the votes to get Trump. There are enough progressive Democrats in the state Senate. There are enough Republicans to put together, I believe it's a 2/3 majority, plus I think judges in the Court of Appeals, to convict and remove him from office. And the question is, does Andrew Cuomo want to go down that road? Is he going to dare the assembly to impeach? We're going to find out.
Ross Barkan, writer of the Substack Political Currents by Ross Barkan, author of The Prince, Andrew Cuomo, Coronavirus, and the Fall of New York. Thank you so much for joining us on what I know is a very busy day for you.
Thank you for having me. I appreciate it.
All right, folks, quick break. We'll be right back to wrap things up. Who are you going to believe? Who are you going to believe? These three women, the state attorney general's office, the investigation that you asked for, or are you going to believe Andrew Cuomo?
Yeah.
Apparently, he has literally just been at the podium claiming that he didn't do any of it. None of it's true. It's all a lie.
Oh, that's so hard to do when it was the investigation that you called for. And now it's like people are going to see through this. This is a bridge too far. When the investigation comes and it makes, it's not the
Pressure
result he
for
likes,
impeachment.
people can see that. Yeah.
If you're watching on Peacock, we will say goodbye and see you tomorrow. And if you are not, we will see you now. And in a moment, we will also see Nomi. Do we have Nomi? Just a reminder, folks, it is your support that makes this show possible. You can become a member by going to jointhemajorityreport.com. Your membership helps keep the show chugging along. In fact, it represents somewhere around 91 to 92.3% of our revenue. I haven't done the math in a while. I've never really done the math.
Wait, what is?
The memberships. Yeah.
I don't know, but it seems wrong.
Well, I don't know. I've said just because I don't know how to do the math. But it's a big percentage of it. So jointhemajorityreport.com. And also, don't forget, you can get your swag at shop.majorityreportradio.com. Nomi will tell us in a moment who's on her program this week. But first, we go to Matt Leck for the Matt Leckian Media Universe update.
Yeah, we had a patrons-only think tank that released last night, patreon.com/leftreckoning for that. And then tomorrow we're talking about how to sell the Green New Deal, not using that name, in Texas to unions. That will be with Ryan Pollack, IBEW member on Left Reckoning on Wednesday evening.
Nomi!
Hi. You're asking me things I don't know.
what's on your who's on your show?
Well, because we changed the format and we used to do daily. So when I would come on the show, I would know who's on the show the same day. But our show's tomorrow.
Okay.
So I know for sure because we're 2 times a week. So this is me just being a scatterbrained person that I am. Hi.
Where can people find it? Where can people find it?
It's a much easier way of doing it than putting me in the spot. You can find us on patreon.com/The Nomi Key Show. We are doing 2 hours, 2 times a week. So you get, and sometimes a little bit extra because of course we go over. So instead of doing the daily show for 1 hour, we are now doing just as much content, even a little bit more in larger doses, longer interviews, which is surprise what people wanted. Go to patreon.com/The Nomi Key Show. Also go to youtube.com/The Nomi Key Show. And of course, check out the committee program on Mondays at 3 p.m. on YouTube and all the other places that they post that I don't know off the top of my head. But I do know that Napoleon the Legend's on tomorrow.
Sweet.
Yeah. We're doing an eviction conversation tomorrow. I just honestly, I'll look at it tomorrow morning.
All right. Well, we're going to talk more about that in a moment. We're going to take a quick break. We'll see you in the fun half.
You are in for it.
All right, folks. 646-257-3920. See you in the fun half.
Are you ready?
Who sent us this?
Alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just as delicious as you could imagine.
The alpha males are back. Boy is back. And the alpha males are back.
Just want to degrade the white man.
Alpha males are back.
I take all of it in my throat.
Alpha males are back.
Snowflake says what?
The alpha males are back.
You are a madman.
And the alpha males are back.
Oh no, Sam Seder! What a fucking nightmare!
Bring back DJ Danner.
Yeah, or a couple of them. Just put them in rotation.
DJ Danner.
Well, the problem with those is they're like 45 seconds long, so I don't know if they're enough of a break.
That's fucking nonsense. You see white people doing drugs, they look worse than normal white people, and all white people look disgusting.
And the alpha males,
psych, fuck them. fuck them. Snowflake says what? What? Snowflake says what?
A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank. Okay, I'm making stupid money. Hell of a lot of bank. A hell of a lot of bank.
All lives matter. Have you tried doing an impression on a college campus?
I think that there's no reason why reasonable people across the divide can't all agree with this. Psych.
And the alpha males are back. And the Africans are black African. And the alpha males are black. And the Africans are back.
When you see Donald Trump out there, doesn't a little part of you think that America deserves to be taken over by jihadists? Keep it at 100.
Can't knock the hustle.
Come on, fuck them. Things I do for the bigger game plan. By the way, it's my birthday. Happy birthday to me, Jew boy. I have a thought experiment for you.
And the alpha males are back. Africans are black. Alpha males are black. Africans are back.
Come on. Come on. Someone needs to pay the price for blasphemy around here.
I am a total pussy.
We are back.
I almost made it.
Welcome to the fun half, ladies and gentlemen.
Sam's eating now.
Yeah, I had to.
I didn't even have my cashews yet.
There you go.
I'm just gonna do it.
Naomi, you've heard the news, I assume, about Andrew Cuomo.
I have.
And what do you think about the prospect for impeachment in the New York, well, not just the Assembly, but the Senate in particular? I mean, that seems to me to be the only way that Andrew Cuomo is going to leave. Under any circumstances, it seems to me, short of them, I don't know. I mean, I just, short of there being like, videotape or something, he's already just deny.
I admittedly did not hear Ross Barkan's interviews, and I have not read the 170-page report, whatever it is, that came out about an hour ago. But there's a couple things here. So there's 3 investigations happening.
Let me say this.
Yeah, go ahead.
That to the extent that and it came out right before the show. To the extent that I've heard any details, he sexually harassed a state trooper on his detail, who he specifically requested be put there, despite the fact that the state troopers didn't feel like that person was qualified for that detail. I mean,
Here are just, some of the details of it: unwanted groping, kissing, huggings, and making inappropriate comments. The governor, blah blah blah. These were not isolated incidents. Tish James says there was a pattern. The governor's pattern sexually harassing behavior was not limited to members of his own staff, extended to other state employees, including a state trooper, says the investigator. And then one of them says that a secretary of his or an executive assistant, he grabbed under her blouse and grabbed her breast. That was one of them too.
The reason why I bring up the state trooper is because this is a situation where, we all know, how these type of accusations are generally greeted by people. And if people want to make sort of like, want to be able to sort of claim the, Cuomo is now claiming the allegations discredit real victims. So he's going hard at it. But the thing about the state trooper is that this is not a situation where, and apparently she made it clear to people around her, other state troopers, that there was a problem here. This is not a situation where she is working for Cuomo. In other words, she doesn't have a lot of times you hear, why didn't you just quit? Or something like this. She doesn't have the agency to quit in that instance, right? She is under a separate sort of chain of command and is being forced to, and I think and the fact that she's a state trooper, for a lot of the people whose first response is, hey, come on. I think that's going to be, I think that's, that is, politicians love to hide behind the cops and the military, and to have a cop be subjected to it, that gives license to a whole nother set of politicians who could go out there and be outraged.
And I just with the state trooper, this was the incident where he ran his fingers down her back from the neck to the middle of the spine and said, "Hey, you," to the state trooper.
Kissing that state trooper in front of other state troopers that obviously he wasn't kissing, as if he was doing some sort of French greeting.
And another time he
the
took
classic French state trooper greeting.
Right. Oh yeah.
Listen, when I get pulled over by the staties for a speeding ticket, that is my first move is always now put on the mask, get a little French greeting kiss. Mm-hmm. Yeah, just a way to break the ice.
Another time he took his
six cheeks,
ran it across her stomach. That's, I don't know why that's one of the most violating parts to me, but your stomach is just so, I don't know. It's it's so intimate and vile.
Okay. So there's, as far as I understand, there's 3 actual investigations that could lead to the ousting of Andrew Cuomo. One was Attorney General Tish James, the Attorney General's office. One is of course, the investigation in the Assembly has not gone to the Senate yet. And of course, there's the investigation from the U.S. Attorney's Office, right? I think the U.S. Attorney's Office has the most teeth. Obviously, it's not as political. It is political still, because all this stuff is political, whether you want to believe it or not. I think for our national audience and New Yorkers too, we have to keep in mind that Attorney General Tish James, I think this is my personal opinion, she owes a lot of her position today to Andrew Cuomo. So the how the politics played out was really fascinating, because simultaneously she is in the best position, whether or not Kathy Hochul inherits the job from Andrew Cuomo, if he does step down or not, or if he just lives out the rest of his term, which is what I believe is going to happen, because any investigation is not going to last enough time for him to run for re-election. Tish James is somebody who's unbeatable. With that being said, she's notorious for being very cautious about taking risks. And so there's a question about whether or not she will run. If she does run, no one on the left would probably, in their right mind, run against her. But there are people who could potentially try to play a game of I'm running first to push her out. Do you see what I'm saying?
Yeah. But I think the fact that she's so cautious just to talk about the allegations, I mean, I think that just buttresses how significant this is, because it's an investigation that he called for.
That's right.
She's not going to throw out these accusations or her findings without substantial corroboration. She's a political actor. She has higher ambitions, as you say. And so this must have been incredibly thorough. And
it was independent. I mean, the people in her office were independent. So with all this being said, Cuomo had the same exact scenario when he was on the Moreland Commission, when Eric Schneiderman, who was notoriously ambitious to run for governor, and of course went down. And there's a lot of questions. I mean, it was all very legitimate what happened to Eric Schneiderman, but there were a lot of questions about whether or not Andrew Cuomo was behind that, or others were behind it that had, it's New York. Okay.
Right.
Simultaneously, there's the deal making in the Assembly. And it seems as if that's been kind of the Assembly investigation has been calmed down a bit, which leads me to believe it's probably not going to go to the Senate. The U.S. Attorney's Office is a completely different scenario. And that has more to do with, remember that thing that happened, the nursing home investigation?
Right.
also really, 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 really bad. So he has multiple investigations happening, but I think what Cuomo is trying to do as a political, he's listen, this guy's he's not an idiot. Like he's as much as we all think, oh, he's going down, he's not going to step down. He's not going to step down, guys. He's not stepping down.
I've already, I mean, that's how I started this. I don't see there's any way for him to step down, except if he's impeached, he's impeached.
But he's not going to be impeached, Sam. He's not being impeached.
You don't think that's going to happen?
No, unless the numbers. Okay, so we had to get through the budget. We had to get through the budget crisis. It was a budget and it was a budget crisis. And the budget is always a crisis in New York because everybody's beholden to Cuomo, unions, whatever. Some unions have pulled from Cuomo without a doubt. A lot of state senators who have more power have stepped up in opposition to Cuomo vocally. I'm looking at Instagram to see everybody's statements today. And a lot of them have higher ambitions. So you have to keep that in mind too. With that being said, his approval ratings need to get so low for him to feel. And his lowest was still not that low for him to step down. And I don't see him.
I'm saying the pressure to impeach.
No, but I'm saying his approval ratings have to get so low for him to get impeached comes from approval ratings.
Well, he does.
Because it's politics.
What's unbelievable is he still just has the holdover based on deal making so many of these lawmakers in a way that I feel like it's just so it's difficult to comprehend. But I mean, that bums me out that you really think that these findings won't move the needle on impeachment. And what doubly bums me out is, as egregious and obvious as these findings are, we knew he was a bully and we knew he was creepy with women. Everyone in the state knew this. But now that we know pretty much for a fact that this is the reality, that this is what could potentially bring him down, not the shuttling of seniors into nursing homes in the middle of COVID that resulted in tens of thousands of deaths. Exactly. Like that has, Ron Kim's been banging on that drum, but that's basically it. And we're seeing that just completely fade into the background. And I think that says a little bit about how broken our society is.
Well, it's fading into the background because the investigation's happening in a different agency that hasn't come out with findings yet. And it's, of course, not as salacious. There are public people, Lindsey Boylan, a friend of mine, she was running for, it legitimately happened. I'm not questioning that, but she was simultaneously running for office. So the lights were shining a little bit more. It's something that New York Times, they want to put out there. I mean, both of them got a lot of attention. One is just being investigated in a legal capacity, and the other two, the Attorney General's was legal, but she's also investigating the Attorney General's office is also investigating the nursing home scandal too. Yep. So there's so much happening, but I think ultimately he's going to do what every politician does, which is wait it out. Don't forget, this man was the Moreland Commission, which he ran on to investigate public corruption in the state, was shut down by him, and his entire inner circle, his most notable inner circle, is in prison now. So This is a man who's been able to ride through extraordinary investigations. And if you don't think he can get through the next year and a half, really, let's be honest, the next 8 months, because he's probably not going to run for re-election, in my opinion. And then that's where you're going to see somebody like Letitia James run, or Cuomo cuts a deal with somebody else. And we as progressives have to be really smart about this too, I think, because this is an extraordinary, this is a teachable moment, in my opinion. Like, it's a masterclass in how power works. There are budgets that are attached to his budget off, like his ability to oversee funding at a time of crisis. There are, the assembly is like, there are people who want to run for, progressives who want to run in the assembly right now, and they want to run against Cuomo, but or people in the assembly who want positions, and same thing in the Senate. It's really a masterclass in power. And I don't know if that necessarily makes sense to everybody, but we should just take a breath and say, who's going to run for election against Cuomo? Who's going to run for Attorney General? And let's really understand it and what their motivations are and who's behind it.
Yeah, it'll be interesting to see what progressive benefits. I am a little bit more convinced that impeachment has a decent shot there. We're just going to have to see. Suddenly there's like, some state senators who bring home like new coliseums. Like we're having a new, in District 23, there's going to be, a new coliseum in Greene County or something like that. I mean, that's the type of thing that I think we're going to keep an eye out. But I have a feeling, particularly you go into August, there's no news. And this is, if you're Andrew Cuomo, you want this investigation to have come out 8 months ago, or I should say maybe a year ago. You don't want it to come out now where there's this sort of like news vacuum, it seems to me. But all right, let's move on, take some IMs, and then we got some clips here to play. Jonathan Armstead, Sam, I have an interview suggestion. Adam Serwer, The Atlantic, has a new book of essays out called The Cruelty is the Point. Seeing you and him be like watching Pacino and De Niro in Heat, two giants at the top of their game, just talking. I actually interviewed Adam for the Peacock show, but maybe we'll have him come on here too for that. Emma knows corn. Lots of force the vote types weighing in on the performative nature of Cori Bush's sleeping outside the house.
Shut the fuck up.
That can't be true.
I'm sorry.
Including one comparing Jimmy. Do we lose? Oh, all right.
The force of
What's
my
this read?
F-bomb.
Including one comparing Jimmy Dore to Fred Hampton for understanding the need for solidarity. What? This is just morons on Twitter. Honestly,
it's just morons.
Listen. I'll make this point. I'm going to make it quick. If you're watching this show and you agree with the idea that what Cori Bush is doing is performative, and that's the only assessment.
This is for lasers. You gotta take
Yeah,
them
okay,
off.
I will.
Yeah.
It is time for you to go. Leave us now. This is not for you. There's something far stupider out there for you. Go get it.
Go
There
get
you go.
that stupid.
That's right.
Reach for that stupid.
Honestly, seriously,
But don't try to screw in a light bulb, but reach for the stupid.
in the absence of Cori Bush sleeping on the thing, nobody would be talking about this anymore. Nobody. It would just disperse into, it just disperses into thousands upon thousands, tens of thousands, hundreds of thousands of individual cases that have no sort of solid voice. These people who complain about the so-called performative nature of what is a performative act, like to sleep out on this, it is performative.
Yes,
but you know what?
It's a political action. That's what all political action is.
And it's not all political
Wait, no, you know what was
actions,
performative?
but it is.
Them going outside of AOC's closed office to protest. But this, when she actually has power and has experience as a houseless person, and when there's something that can be done about it immediately with the CDC, with the federal eviction moratorium. I mean,
There's
come
no
on.
other. She's using the only tool that she has, and it is effective to the extent that it's like driving attention and forcing the White House at least to pay attention and sit in the White House and figure out like how can we fix this. They may not.
Well, I just want to make one point that they're kind of inoculated to the accusation that they're helping Republicans, but there's a reason that a lot of people that are playing footsie with this sort of nonsense had to be very ostentatious about how they supported Nina Turner, because it was really conditioning, especially particularly Dore, his fans to look at Nina Turner and say, oh, she's an establishment. She got endorsed by Ed Markey, part of the establishment, right? Just this dumb idiocy, which not only helps the GOP, but also the Chantel Browns and the Hillary Clintons.
Yeah.
And that's who they're working for.
Well, that and understand, Dore said it himself on Tucker Carlson's show. It is deleterious, according to him, to have progressives in the Democratic Party because it gives people hope that the Democratic Party can be reformed. And he doesn't want that. He wants the People's Party thing or whatever it is.
The one
and
that takes in hundreds of thousands of dollars.
They're
and spends 80% of
95%.
it on,
I think you'll find it's closer to 90.
on just events and nothing to candidates. Well, I'm looking forward to that $15K left over from your grift that you're going to shuttle
for the 10
to
candidates. Each one's going to get $1,500.
the Green Party cranks that are left over from that 2016 event.
Between the 101 and the 5, malarkey, meaningless talk, nonsense, perfect slogan for the Biden administration. Jerry Kleem. People seem to be okay with breakthrough COVID when vaccinated, but long COVID causes a shrinking of brain matter. My debt-free butt stays home in London because my brain is my only asset. The only thing I would say is that we don't have full details yet on long haul COVID. With that said, caution is what makes sense. Period. End of story. All the ding-dongs who are like, why would you need masks now that the vaccine's here? We go rip the masks off. Otherwise, the vaccine doesn't mean anything. It's like you don't want to be 3 weeks behind this thing. You want to be 3 weeks ahead. You want to be like, I bought too much toilet paper. I bought, in February, you want to buy the toilet paper in February 2020 and then say in April, I didn't need to buy so much, but we got it. We're going to lend some to our friends. The point is, when you're talking with a pandemic, with a new pathogen that you're not familiar with, and nobody is because it didn't exist before in humans, better to err on the side of caution. And when you talk about the weighing the opportunity cost, it's one thing to say okay, we really do have to weigh the cost of keeping kids from school and the benefit that we get from keeping them from school. And you weigh that. But when it comes to masks, just as a for instance, the cost is almost literally zero.
Well, that's also why the CDC shouldn't have.
Except, of course, of the deep control that the government then has over you, that they can put a mask on you. They've trained you now.
That's literally 1984.
There you go.
It's censorship, Emma. I don't know if you know, but the mask, I put censorship on my mask and I got in front of a microphone in front of Congress and said, you're censoring me as a sitting congresswoman. Yeah.
So wise.
The new term is muffled.
Bible of Marjorie Taylor.
You have muffled my voice. Not exactly
Well, that's
censored.
accurate.
You've muffled me. Over Wendell Holmes lice. Oliver Wendell Holmes lice. I don't know why. Joe Manchin and Lindsey Graham working together to spread COVID, and you thought bipartisanship was dead. The other Biden... Stephen Crowder's nightmare is Sam Seder. Sam Seder's night teenage girls 2-night slumber party. Chairman Meow. Hey, Sam and crew, here in Boston, which is admittedly very economically resilient, I've already noticed an increase in emergency rent assistance requests to our mutual aid group. Meanwhile, WBUR just aired a segment about subsidizing businesses, enticements to invest in upscale real estate with exotic statues, and how landlords are coming up with creative ways to sell property. Oh, yeah, and 2 Green Line trolleys collided over the weekend down the street from me. Jeez. Ray, sounds like Eamon Hawk should make a video of Sam's nightmare, teenager staying at my house. Dave Rubin is silly. Sam, what's more destructive, a bunch of teenagers or a bunch of kids Saul age? I'll pick teenagers. I agree. It's just the mass is just unbelievable. Josh from Tucson, dang it, Sam, I'm listening to Magic Spoon ad and now I'm starving for some reason. Dennis Miller, Sammy baby, with these moratoriums ending, there's about to be as many homeless people walking around as extras in a David Lee film, Cha-Cha-Cha. That's the Dennis Miller joke. Emma approved signs. What up, MR crew? I'm noticing a growing frustration from the mass vaccinated with those choosing not to be masked or vaccinated. It makes sense because people want their lives back and for this to end while a lot of the maskers are being antagonistic and holding up progress. So what's the way forward? By the way, I'm in Louisiana. Hang on. I mean, it's a disaster down there. And Louisiana, Arkansas, really ugly.
Before we, I know this is kind of silly, but I sent this Bradley. Just put this up really quick. It's just an image of the NBC broadcast of Cuomo's presser, and the people that pay us off to not support force the vote. They seem to have owned Cuomo a little bit by accident because they're doing a split screen of the Olympics as well, and next to it they put there's a Google ad, and I'm just biding time until Bradley puts it up. They put it says how to start a new career, and it's
Wait, also, he's really dyeing his hair, guys. Check out his hair. Can we go back to that and just like really zoom in? I'm sorry, but this reeks of insecurity. What is he doing? He's super tan. What is this? This is not normal for him. I've studied a lot of Cuomo. No, this is not how he normally looks. What is going on with his hair, guys?
I'm not exactly sure.
It's like a little Devo-ish.
Yeah.
It's like a helmet.
Yeah.
Well, I mean, he's out there and he's also trying to sell books, and he's
single.
A little worried.
Selling books, single, looking for the homosexuals.
Oh, jeez, man.
I think being governor would give you the juice.
That was a real fun time.
No, clearly it's not working.
All right, let's go into some of these clips here. Oh, well, here's Matt Walsh of the Daily Wire on Monday, talking about how oppressive this eviction moratorium is.
That you are telling people that they are required to keep people in their homes, on their property, who are not paying for the right to be there. That's what the government declared. If you're a landlord, and there's someone on your property, in your home, who is refusing to pay you, refusing to compensate you at all, you must continue to pay for them to live there. You got to pay their bills. You're paying the mortgage. You have to pay their rent for them and allow them to stay on your property. That, you know what that is? That's slavery. That's forced labor.
Oh, there we go.
You're being forced by the government to pay someone else's rent for them on your property. It's like, it's unthinkable. And yet millions of idiots will defend it.
Can you pause it for a
on
second?
The basis of compassion.
So, like, this is another part of the conservative project where if there's a taking that's done, right? There's apparently a finite amount of resources in the world. And somehow, if the landlord isn't making income on this property that they own, that is taking away from you, the regular citizen. And who is the one that's taking, right? You kind of have a clear picture of the person who's not paying their rent, who's maybe not participating in society. That's like where he goes. I mean, that's not the reality, but that's the straw man that conservatives create in order for people to feel like there's an anxiety about an eviction moratorium or policy.
What I understand is like they've co-opted slavery.
That too.
In a way that's like, I mean, they've been doing this in multiple forms, but it's really getting to a point where the landlord is the slave to the government. How about this? The landlord, who, as we know in New York, is extremely powerful and gives a lot of money to the government. Why don't they, like, I don't know, try to get some sort of rent really, I mean, it's not even, there's, everybody wins when there's a rent relief, when there's a mortgage relief, like everybody wins. This is what I don't understand. Like, who are they doing the bidding for?
Owning property is slavery, apparently.
Well,
everything's also the Holocaust.
The reason why you have landlords who want to kick people out is because they want the bump up in rent that they know they can get right now, and they can't do that in a lot of these places because they have tenants in there and they can't get the bump up in rent.
Wait, but Sam, hang on. I'm sorry. Is there a bump up in rent? this is a theory. Like at this point, like I really don't believe.
Well,
in 5 years, maybe in 10 years.
No. I think you could turn around probably right now and get a bump up in rent in a lot of places.
In the South, not in New York, not in the North.
I don't know. It depends. I mean, it depends on where you are. I mean,
You're seeing an influx in the South where like people have gone down there because it's warmer for.
But you also are seeing it. You're also seeing it in the suburbs and in rural areas and in the Northeast as well. I mean, so there's a big opportunity there to bump up rents. I think, and landlords who don't think that they can bump up rents, maybe they're not going to be as quick to do it. I mean, not every single landlord is going to evict their tenant that can at this point, but a huge number of them are. And the bottom line is, this is not slavery. This is
really, thank you.
Let's address his comment first. There is no labor associated with it. Yes, you're carrying the costs of this, of not getting rent, which of course is not just the same amount as your mortgage, because then you would never rent it in that instance, or you're renting it for profit. But the point is, you're going to get, but we do have mortgage relief. We do have mechanisms in which to make landlords whole, and money is in the system that is coming towards, is coming to landlords down the road. Part of it is all held up at this point. But the idea that it's slavery is just, I'm sorry, it's absurd. It's not slavery. They want to equate having sovereignty over your own body and having an ability to sort of dictate what you do as an individual as the same as if property has those exact same inherent rights, and as if property is a human being, and property is not a human being. And it is really just their notion of elevating property to the same status as a human.
It's also just like complete. There's in Sweden and in other Scandinavian countries, they have tenants unions that negotiate prices down and make sure that a lot of the prices of housing and rent in those countries don't get above a certain threshold. So in Matt Walsh's view, the entire nation of Sweden is filled with slaves. Anybody that works well, I would imagine that the members of the union are part of the slavery system as well, but anybody that works in housing is a part of the enslavement.
Well, I always have problems with like anything that's Nordic because they're the power in equation. So being in Greece where like everything's predatory and like, that could never happen in a million years where the property, like I even with Bernie, it's like, I have a really big issue with anything that's equated to Nordic countries because it's a power of the EU. It's the financial power and they're predatory in other countries in the South and in a whole different,
an
capacity.
Example of what it could be.
No, I understand, but in a place like if you're in New York, I mean, if we're going to equate it to what's happening in the U.S. right now, this is a form of disaster capitalism that's about to take place and is taking place in multiple communities in different forms, whether it's a community of color or it's a large city like New York. I mean, this is what is about to take place is you have rent relief in some capacities and you have mortgage relief in some capacities. And obviously suburbs are completely different for a whole other set of reasons. But what I don't understand in this situation is the Republicans' strategy here. If you're going to be the populist party, if you're going to sit here and try to speak to the everyman, how?
Yep. We lost her again. All right, Matt.
For the landowner.
Right.
It doesn't, this is what's fascinating.
You broke up. We missed that.
Go ahead.
I said, how could the Republicans...
Go ahead. You're back now. How could the Republicans what?
Well, the Republicans, look, the Republicans are not, they're not doing that for real. And they are not going to throw over their elevation of property rights for the sake of their new sort of like populist project.
Yeah, I mean, private real estate is a conspiracy to keep people homeless. Like that helps investment. If you go build enough housing to house everybody, that is going to hurt their investments in those properties, right? Like that's just, they're fundamentally a cabal against the building of housing. And so like, and the one thing that they do have in common with slavers is that they rely on state power for enforcement, right? Just like slaves needed slave catchers. It's not the free market. You need the state to come evict these people to the point where we're forcing, police to get vaccinated so they can go evict people, right? And we're just deciding as a people, we're not going to use the government for that.
There's a difference between treating human beings like property and treating property like property. Exactly. Right. Or like treating property like human beings. Is there any more, or do we need to watch any more of the Matt Walsh's, the desperate attempt to elevate property to the level of a human being? Is that good?
Yeah, I think he expresses himself enough there.
Well done.
Wow, we all just need to express ourselves. He did that.
Let's look into the, I don't know if we know what's happening with the infrastructure bill, but I don't know. What should we play here?
Well, I mean, it's not on sound, but we have. Yeah.
Okay, let's do that. This is, as you know, right now, they seem to have settled on the Portman Cinema bill as it stands now. All of the major things that were sort of roadblocks to it seem to be resolved. And of course, the idea now is that the right is going to embrace this bill, or going to attempt to. And it's well, watch this. This is what happens like when you have two different cross currents. This is clip number 5.
Reuters describes this as a glide path to the $3.5 trillion tonight, and their write-up of this, Senator. So your response?
So a couple things. It is the person in my state stuck in traffic who's fearful of their home flooding, who wants to have a better job, that actually would like to make more money but doesn't make a lot of money now, who really likes this bill. I talked to Fox News watchers. They love this bill. Now, is there somebody who's wealthy? But actually, for the wealthy, this means less. They have chauffeurs. They have private jets. They can fly here and there if it floods. It's the people who live in their own home who are at risk of flooding who like this.
But, Senator, why didn't you...
Oh, I wish we could hear Ingram more there. But Senator, you like the cross current they have here. The problem they have is that there is such a wedge between two of the members of their basically their constituency. They have the lunatics who are probably still like now 60%, 70% of the party who are like, we can't do anything. We like anything that is done that accrues to Joe Biden is bad, right? Inherently, even if it puts money in my pocket, it is bad. And then there's the other 30% who are like, I want taxes cut and this and that, but I also want roads. Like, I mean, it's a bipartisan bill. I
love owning the libs, but like that can't be all we do, right?
Well, yeah, it's like we're not getting taxes raised, and they're gonna fix my stuff. So why don't I want to do this? And the problem is,
doesn't go as far as after Trump has given them cash. Like.
Yeah, exactly. And Kennedy is trying to like sort of hold on to that 30% who are just like, as long as my taxes aren't raised, I'm on board with this. And Ingram is like, no, this can't happen. And this is, if they can pass that $3.5 trillion bill, that's what is going to be so beneficial about all of this. It is going to tear the right apart. Now, I mean, from a political standpoint, the better part is going to be that it actually like brings material benefit.
Right.
But it is going to be very
and it's also
problematic.
popular. Like, just the concept of infrastructure is generally popular. People like roads, and except maybe Matt.
No, I like roads. I mean, people know that their infrastructure sucks too. That they ride over bridges that aren't safe.
Play number 6. This extends it. Hold on. Here it is.
Let them show their hand, but it got flipped, didn't it? You guys got played on this. You had to vote first or agree first. They still haven't shown the text of their legislation, have they, sir?
The ironic thing is you are agreeing with the squad and Bernie. It's amazing.
yeah.
You're agreeing with Pelosi. We think this
Yeah,
makes
that's
that
funny.
behemoth less likely to pass. And somehow you are trying, if I may, Laura, we make that bill less likely to pass. But if we sink this bill and you marry them together, it's more likely to pass.
Okay.
That's just what simple logic tells you.
Senator,
I'm not quite following.
You don't follow. So you don't follow the Wall Street Journal, National Review, yours truly, any number of people online who have been writing about economics. Steve Moore for like 35 years.
Separating them two makes it harder to pass the 3.5 trillion.
No.
They know Democratic politics.
Make
they know
them show
Democratic
their.
politics.
You made it easy for them. Make them show their text first. You realize
that's right.
that America is going to be
Nancy,
changed
will you
forever.
Tell us everything that you have? Hey, Nancy, will you tell us everything?
They can't pass it without.
Laura.
Senator,
you know that's not going to happen.
Senator, I know you're doing this.
What we have is
Senator,
$110 billion for roads and bridges.
Senator,
$65 billion for
you could have
broadband.
gotten that. You could have gotten that without giving away the store, but I know you're talking loudly
Laura,
tonight because you're trying to be
you've been around
really
Washington
persuasive.
enough. But
it's
Oh my God!
They're less
Wow.
likely to get their 3.5 trillion.
Okay, so
That's
when they
the
pass
gorgeous thing.
when you pass the when they pass the 3.5 trillion, you're going to come back on the show and say you were wrong?
Oh, so and somehow
Yes
I'm
or no?
responsible, even though we've made
Okay,
it less.
no.
I'll come back on the show, but even though we've made
All
it
right.
less possible, if it still happens, somehow this is to blame. Now,
Okay.
Laura, that logic is specious, and you know that.
All right, Senator, we appreciate your coming on
Well,
tonight. and
drop
I
my
don't think I've ever heard
down home this. So darn it! I meant fake, not specious. Fake, false. I mean, that right there is what I'm talking about, right? Like, I mean, Kennedy's right.
He is.
Doing the bipartisan bill does make the reconciliation bill harder to pass. No doubt about it. Cassidy, I'm sorry, not Kennedy, but Cassidy, it does make it harder to pass the reconciliation bill, right? I mean, if this had fallen apart, everybody goes to the cinema and goes like, we did what you wanted us to do and you failed. Now you got to do it our way. So I think Cassidy is correct that it does make it harder, but I think he's also correct when he says like, well, even if it does pass, we did make it harder. And I think that's true. And it is, I think that is the nature of the argument we're going to see. And there, this is the thing. Laura Ingraham doesn't care. Mark Levin doesn't care. They'll go after the Cassidys. They'll go after McConnell again. And this is Donald Trump has a gravitational pull. And this is also as a political matter, I also do think that it's a valid thing to investigate the whole thing where people came in and smashed the Capitol and tried to take over the Capitol thinking.
What was that? What are you talking
Overthrow
about?
the election.
I don't remember that.
But as a political matter, what it does is it continues to keep Donald Trump as the sort of like shadow president, right? Like the biggest problem you have on off-year elections is that you're not running against the opposition party's president. And in 2022, the Democrats, and I don't think that they were terribly, I think they're just looking at Donald Trump. They're not thinking about this concept because Republicans would do this all the time. But in 2022, Donald Trump is going to be enough of a presence that it's going to bring out those voters who came out in 2018 and in 2020, but not big enough of a presence, hopefully, to bring out his supporters because he's not running for anything. And so that is the dynamic that's getting set up here. Now, remember, The Republicans have done this for years. They were running against Bill Clinton in 2004. Like I had people who called me up in 2005 on the radio and just Bill Clinton this, Bill Clinton that. I'm like, dude's been out of office for 5 years.
Yeah.
Obama just let George Bush just skate. I'm talking only as like a political matter. Never mind like the sort of and so this is what we're watching with this bipartisan bill. And and frankly, like McConnell had no choice because it does make the reconciliation bill harder to pass if you have the bipartisan bill is there, but it may not be enough to stop it. We'll see. It's a really interesting dynamic that's playing out, and to watch, Ingram go after Cassidy like that, and Cassidy try and sort of say like, but wait a second, let's be nuanced here. I just decreased the odds that the reconciliation bill is going to pass, but I can't prevent it from passing.
But Sam, they also have different timelines. You know what I mean? Like Laura Ingraham and in Congress and the same, right, are so short term. They're short sighted. And I just think that like anytime there's a senator who's on air, they're operating from a longer term, more thoughtful. It's just they're conditioned to get deals passed, whether or not it's fair or not. It's just fundamentally different. And so like watching that play out was fascinating to me because I think it just illustrates there's a completely different mindset based on their like how they function. And I don't know if it's just Donald Trump. I think Laura Ingraham is beholden to Donald Trump because she wants her ratings to be higher.
Oh, well, I mean, Donald Trump is also beholden to Laura Ingraham. I mean, they're not there.
You go.
They operate in the exact same sort of waters. I mean, Donald Trump was a talk radio host as president, essentially. But my point being that Donald Trump now exists. Donald Trump is not swaying Laura Ingraham. Laura Ingraham would take this position otherwise. But the problem is that Donald Trump is now out there functioning as a driver of negative partisanship that, in most instances, Democrats don't have. They don't know how to, like, they almost like seem fundamentally allergic, like, we'll let bygones be bygones, instead of talking like, George Bush was incredibly unpopular when he left office. He had something like a 35% approval rating. Bill Clinton had a 60% approval rating. But the Republicans kept Bill Clinton alive for decades as a political figure to vote against. George Bush now is like, oh, I'm going to have him over and we're going to drink tea and I'm going to watch him paint.
Candy.
He's like the candy man. Just as a political matter, never mind how despicable it is from a moral standpoint.
Inside the candy is yellow cake uranium.
Exactly. We found it. We found it. You somewhere found it.
Taste too.
So it is this is a gift to the Democrats. Donald Trump is a gift to the Democrats in this off-year election that they frankly don't deserve because they haven't learned that they don't even realize the gift that they're getting. They just, I feel like it's just sort of, it's almost just sort of knee jerk. It's almost like, like, I don't know, in the same way that like it's almost animalistic. They're not actually thinking like, hey, wait a second, we have a great opportunity to run against a non-sitting president. They don't realize that. It's just more sort of just like, I smell meat and I'm
sitting president is asleep.
Right. And
it's not Obama. I mean, and that was what I was going to say earlier is this infrastructure bill should be Obamacare. I mean, the way that Obama ran around the country campaigning for Obamacare and made it so that Republicans would rebrand it, and because it was so popular in Louisiana, it was. Don't take away they didn't like the Obamacare statement, as we all remember, but they liked having their Obamacare, and so like this infrastructure bill is that. And Biden and Kamala Harris should be doing what Obama did, running around the country, and they can't because Kamala Harris is sadly not as popular and Biden is asleep at the wheel. So like, what are they going to do? How are they going to manifest this when you don't have an Obama in office?
I don't. My recollection of that is not. I mean, I guess they did go around and do it, but it was not. It was deeply unpopular. I mean,
no, of course. No, they did a massive campaign for Obamacare around the country and got it passed that way. I mean, it was a huge, it was what the Democratic Party put their money into. But simultaneously, people in Kentucky who had, once they got their Obamacare, they didn't like the name of Obamacare, but they didn't want to get rid of it. It was popular.
Yeah, they liked Kentucky Connect, but they were
exactly.
Yeah, as long as we don't get the Obamacare. and it wasn't, Obama tried to hold off on that name associated with him. They did it because they wanted to basically to tell their people, like, do you really want black care? Do you really want black guy care?
Mm-hmm.
I don't know if you want that black guy care.
And they tried to co-opt it like 4 years too late.
But I also imagine that once they pass it, they'll go out. You don't need to, I mean, like, look, the bottom line is there's one vote. There's one vote that you need, and it's Kristen Sinema. And the question is like, you know, does it help or hurt to go to Arizona and campaign on it? I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. I don't know. Like, do you let her have her performative, like, I'm making this a $3.4 trillion bill. Right. I mean, you got to sort of wait and see what she's coming to the table with at this point.
What if she prints the bill on pink paper?
There you go.
Does it count? Like, can we do it? Or, you know, with a tie-dye staple?
Bill text in earring form. Bill text in earring form.
Yeah, right.
I mean, the reality is like, honestly, like, Arizona is not what the nation thinks it is. It is an extremely, it's a split state. They're the independent party, the independents, whatever faction. It's not Independence Party. It's not New York. It's far more progressive. It's far more anti-establishment. And I think what she's doing, what people are not really like catching on to, is she's playing into the anti-establishment aspect. She's not actually playing into the conservative. It's her being anti-establishment, not in a McCain way, like in a modern day, under 40 anti-establishment way. And that is what the Democrats and progressives, when they're protesting her, are not understanding in the deepest of ways. Like, she is trying to strengthen that and build herself into becoming a John McCain. But like, the reality is like, if you're going to protest her, you have to say, like, this is a person who's preventing you from surviving this economy. And that's all it should be about. That's it, the economy.
That's my point. Does it help to have Joe Biden show up there as the establishment? No. My guess would be probably not. And so that's why I think you're not seeing, because it's really coming down to that one vote. I mean, Joe Manchin is going to vote for this reconciliation bill. I'm quite convinced of it. They'll argue about stuff within the interior of it, but it is, you know, but she is making a show. And the point is that, like, the more Joe Biden goes down there, you know, whatever it is, 75-year-old Joe Biden goes down there as the beacon of the establishment. That's what I'm saying. Like, she gets value in being resistant to it. So on some level, you just sort of like let her shadow box, and then she tires herself out, and maybe you lose $100 billion or something like that, or it's just hidden or something, and that's the end of it. That's why.
Or if you really want to be clever, paint her as a Republican, like really, like a right-wing Trumpster. It'll turn off. Seriously.
Oh yeah.
You're empowering the Trumpsters. I mean, that's what I don't understand what the Democrats are doing right now. And paint her as a Trumpster.
I think it's. I honestly, my sense is like they're just nervous about. Here's the thing. On some level, there's a quality of like you're playing chess with a monkey, and you just don't know. Like, what she's doing does not necessarily have a logic to it, right? Because something like 60% of her voters, maybe more, were Biden voters. And, you know, from what I've read and what I've heard is that, like, when she won her primary for the Senate, people didn't think that she was going to. And so there were not the forces deployed against her. And she only has so much wiggle room. Like, I think there'll be like a Democratic Party be like, you vote for this and it's 3.4 trillion or 3.3 trillion. Okay, fine. You get to do your little show. But if you sink this, you're done. You're done. And it's not like she's going to have a great lobbying career. I don't get the sense that she's beloved by her colleagues. No. I don't get the sense that there's an opportunity for her.
Romney's sniveling behind her back or you know, what was that? What was caught on camera?
She's not going to be able to go.
About how she loves how she never, met a camera she doesn't like, that they're saying that stuff.
Yeah, I don't get the sense that, like, I think that she has a lot less latitude to play with than I don't
Manchin.
know.
People love Manchin. I mean, that's the crazy part. Everybody loves Manchin.
Well,
they mock him.
Manchin fits West Virginia better, or at least that's a red state, and that's the Democrat they're going to elect. And there's more wiggle room in a state like Arizona. And she was
Kirsten Sinema's from Florida. She's from the Panhandle. Let's just make that very clear. What's going on there? But also, Manchin's loved by the reporters too. Like, he's beloved. Like, we as progressives just like love to dismantle him. But the reality is in the Beltway, there are these relationships, and reporters love Manchin. They think he's charismatic. They think he's transactional, which of course he is. And Kirsten Sinema doesn't have that. She's not at the cool kids table at lunch. Manchin is.
Yep. So I guess, we'll see about that. That's why, like, I'm not convinced that them going out right now and selling the plan nationally, as opposed to like just being quiet about it. Because I'm sorry, like, just even look at that exchange between Ingram and Cassidy. We are pretty savvy viewers of the news, and it's just like, wait a second, there's a bipartisan bill and then there's a reconciliation bill that they're going to have a vote-a-rama. It's just like, why go out and advertise? Just pass the freaking thing. And there's no, I just don't think that there is a potential for to sway Sinema in that way. All right, let's play this clip of Cuomo.
So Bradley tells us that this Cuomo clip involves a slideshow. And I assumed that this was done by somebody collecting evidence of Cuomo's touchy-feeliness. But I just learned this is a pre-prepared slideshow that he included in his defense.
Yeah, this is the defense. This is why I said about the kissing a trooper and not kissing the other, because his defense is going to be this is just part of his culture and he just kisses everybody.
Yes, yeah, he harasses everybody. Just like the
he's Italian.
Well, right,
Italian.
We're being Italiophobic, obviously. Hey.
Sam, we need to bring your sister in as your Italian correspondent.
Here we go.
I do it with everyone, black and white, young and old, straight and LGBTQ.
The body defense. Oh my God.
People.
Charlie Rangel.
Friends, strangers.
Al Gore. Whatever.
People who I meet on the street.
All this normal that I've decided to keep in a folder that it can be quickly put into a video.
That's what we've been doing they've been doing for months. I want you to pull every photo of me where I'm making out with somebody. I don't care.
Kissing on Getty Images. Pay for a subscription because we need this. When I say black, you show a black guy. When I say white, you show a white guy. When I say old, you show me kissing an old man on the face.
Even that again.
You got that?
We're gonna practice, okay? You ready? You're working the slides, and okay, black people, straight, gay.
Oh no, that's not a straight person. Go back.
Okay.
Wait. Do you guys remember the video? Don't you remember this was during the primary, the last primary he did, where he was like, I am a Muslim, I am a gay man, I am a lesbian, I am a black woman, do you remember that? That's what this is.
That's very much in that vein.
Play that again, please.
That audio needs to go over this video.
No, we got this is it.
This is so good.
Play. Start it over again, Bradley. Let's try this again. We're going to do this again. Ready? Just play it.
I do it with everyone.
I am a Muslim.
Black and white,
I am a
young and old, straight and LGBTQ.
Oh my God.
Powerful people.
Charlie Rangel.
Strangers.
Al Gore.
People who I meet on the street.
we need to be clear that that's not what was in this report of just him going up and like greeting people over affectionately. It's a pattern of like touching people.
Why didn't he put up like state troopers, National Guardsmen, active duty, Air Force, Marines?
And sometimes I put my vest or two. I got a little, with my Italian heritage, I'm very grabby. I thought it was a meatball.
Cable guys.
That was a breast?
National Grid repairs.
It'd be funny if he had a compilation of him grabbing like Al Gore and Bill Clinton's asses.
Yeah, exactly.
Everyone.
Look at. Here I am cupping Al Gore's balls when I need him. That's the way I work. Yeah, I do it to everybody.
Here's me putting my finger from the top of Bill de Blasio's neck down to the small of his back. Look at what I do to say hi.
Look at the tongue I'm using with Bloomberg here. I got my tongue lodged deep into his ear. Look at that. Do it with everybody. Everybody.
The ultimate Bill de Blasio move in their like constant war would be him being like, I'm an Italian man. I've never done that. And that should be his response, is to out him for being like, listen, we Italians, we respectable Italians, we don't do this. You did that. And that's like because everyone knows, right? There's like this war between them.
They should have had him. They should have set up a picture of him doing it with a dog. Yeah, that would have been like, look, even with puppies, I do. Look at me make out with that puppy, and also stroke. Look, I'm scratching the belly of a dog.
I'm kissing a baby on a campaign trail, and my assistant on her chest. Same thing. That's what politicians do.
Scratching a dog, scratching this. Look at that.
Look,
unbelievable.
He has no racism in his creepy sexual advances. It's black, Asian, gay. He'll do it with everybody.
That's pretty impressive.
I could not believe that's real. I love that I exist in a world where I'm allowed to witness that firsthand and understand that somebody put that together and thought that was a good defense. Like, what beauty there is in this world, right?
That's
what happens when your inner circle goes to jail.
I'd like to see that folder of editing materials. I'd like to see all the different clips they didn't use.
Right, exactly. And the ones that are on the floor, like, that one's probably not good.
Right.
Yeah, I wouldn't do that one either. That one is actually candid. That was not supposed to be in there. That was not a press shot.
You're right. They must have left the tongue pics on the
Exactly. Yeah, no, we're not going to use the security camera footage. That we don't want.
The person actually accused us.
Story too of like somebody I know who Cuomo
I'll tell you
her husband.
First off, though, this is like, the guy is like, he is about as close to his back up against the wall to release this, right? It is like, I'm going to put out the most humiliating, embarrassing looking thing possible, just to show you, like, I'm a human foibles. Yes. And then, like, what I was also surprised, like, the next thing they're going to do, they're going to, when he gets really desperate, he's going to start putting out the clips of Biden, like, grabbing people and stuff like that. That's the way that they're going to try and normalize the thing. If you're going to come after me, you got to go after Joe, too. That's it. That message has been, relayed to the White House.
And that
best for you guys not to weigh in on this.
It's just insane. He's going to, like, finish his term most likely, and Al Franken just shaking his fist at the sky.
Yeah,
guys, Tara Reid's gonna come out and his saying this is not sexual harassment. That's what's gonna happen. We'll find a way to pay off anybody to defend him. That's what he does.
You're breaking up.
Jesus Christ.
You gotta get some Wi-Fi. All right, let's read some IMs. Will from Indiana. The Cuomo sexuals are going to be oddly silent today. In all serious though, I think it's definitely important to remember there are victims in this case, and we should offer our love and solidarity to them. Finally, let's go. Nina Turner left his best.
I should also say, though, the Cuomo sexuals might be a little bit busy with the photos that he released voluntarily.
That's right.
That's a joke.
Super League hater. Victims. Any update on anti-partisan gerrymandering legislation? It is basically Done. It's done. They lost the states. They're done. Come shower with Crowder. Jimmy Dore had the People's Party Nick Brannon on his show for almost 2 hours trying to sell never voting for Dems again, and that the only good choice is to vote for his third party whose founder has only $19,000. It's complete BS. I'm a working class man and I want to punch Jimmy Dore in the face. Sunset Lake THC. Emma, who do you think takes the NFC least this year? Everyone's hyping up the Cowboys, but honestly, Washington's my sleeper.
I think Washington or the Giants take the. Why did I fucking say that out loud? The Cowboys don't have a good enough defense, I think, but that offense is gonna be significant, like a real powerhouse. But they have issues on defense. But Washington's very well rounded, unfortunately. But when was the last time there was a back-to-back NFC East champion? I don't remember. It's been a while, so.
Charlie Cuck. I just got a Moderna booster shot today. Just booked through Walmart. No ID or anything required, and just claimed this would be my first shot. Seems like booster's imminent and wanted to beat the rush since I'm high risk. Turns out, though, telling friends that many had already had this idea. Only concern is how widespread strategy impacts national vax statistics. I wouldn't be surprised if we're starting to see, like, some impact. But, you're talking about 500,000 a day. I don't know that people are rushing. There's a large cohort of people rushing to get that third shot, but maybe.
Well, I'm just wondering what happens when my Excelsior pass expires, right? Like it says on here on my wallet that my vaccine expires.
I never got one of those.
You just literally plug in your info and it gets in your Apple Wallet. But it says it expires at the beginning of I think after like 6 months after my first shot, like in October. So I'm a little concerned about it. I don't know.
West Coast Hawks.
By then they'll have.
Maybe.
West Coast Hawks. Hey, I'm our crew. Kindly asking you all to keep an eye on Seattle's primary election today. The most interesting race to me is one for city attorney. It's between a kick-ass progressive and TK all day and an incumbent do-nothing Dem and a sentient racially charged next-door post. In my opinion, it will be a better barometer for how the defund movement is doing than any mayor's race. Much love. We'll check that out. Bradley, just keep an eye on that, what happens in Seattle. Joe's Snuffy. So with the homeless population set to increase by 1,000%, we should decide what the modern Hoovervilles will be called. I'm partial to Bidenbergs myself. What do you think we should call them? No kidding.
I like Bidenburbs.
Bidenberg. Bidenburbs
I like
is better.
Bidenburbs.
I like that.
Sterno. Pritzker in Illinois did a better job handling COVID than either Cuomo or Newsom. You never hear about it, though, because the power of New York City and California media. Check out the fight that broke out at the Giants practice today. Not their year.
What do you mean?
That's
like healthy.
Your left testicle. The Cuomo defense. It's absolutely fine. I rub my testicles on her face. I do it with everyone. Black, gay, white, LGBTQ people I meet on the street.
Powerful people.
Seems ridiculous, but this is actually working with a lot of partisans. It is just disgusting. Elemento. Sam, you don't have to sell swag in the store. I can hook you up with some heady mids, bro. Hit me up.
I don't know what that means.
I don't know what that means either. Jimmy Dorable. No, Mickey, just say you have a surprise guest and that people have to tune in to find out who the guest is.
Yeah.
Boom.
So clever. I'm too honest, man.
Ricardo Lazarus. It is a surprise guest. Surprise to you. Can you imagine how...
No, it's not a surprise. I was actually told. I just forgot.
Can you imagine how the unpaid intern who banned Dave Rubin is going to feel when that results in the absolute destruction of Twitter? Sam's butt joint. I'm of the belief that the Democratic Party doesn't actually respond to left pressure, but to worsening material conditions, and even then in the most minimalistic ways. Is there any reason to doubt this belief given what we're seeing with evictions? I think that they respond to left pressure to the extent that it can be mounted. I mean, they're responding. They're not responding to the material conditions of people being evicted today because nobody's been evicted today. There's proceedings. They're responding to pressure from Cori Bush and the attention she's bringing to it. I mean, That's the way this works. And the question is like, can this pressure build or does it dissipate? And that's really what it comes down to.
Yeah, it's definitely both.
You look at like, you know, you look at what's happening with antitrust in the administration. That's a function of pressure from the left. I mean, I guess maybe some people say like antitrust isn't necessarily left, but I perceive it as, not exclusively, but I believe it is. And certainly the pressure is coming from the left more than the right in terms of this antitrust stuff. You know, it didn't have to make the idea of making Lena Khan chair of the FTC, like that came out of nowhere.
Right. I
didn't hear anybody. The idea of the guy, is it Cantor, who's the DOJ antitrust lawyer? Cantor? I can't remember his name, but that was the position that people thought like, oh, they're going to balance out Lena Khan with that position, and they didn't. And it's basically because, I mean, I think a lot of this, particularly with a guy like Biden, is he doesn't have a clue. And by that, I don't mean like he's oblivious. It's just that like he doesn't care that much.
Yeah. I would also say like these Democrats don't care about these conditions. They're worried about the political pressure. Like there's Democrats that want this eviction moratorium to go through and that hope that it doesn't reflect poorly on them.
Right. They don't want the political blowback. And then but they know that our brand suffers and then maybe we can't do that. I mean, that's the way that works. But I think on a lot of these topics, like, you know, Joe Biden is got like a portfolio. And anything outside his portfolio, it's sort of like a wash. I mean, on some level, like, you know, Bernie Sanders did not have a big portfolio of foreign policy going into 2016. He had a sense of American history, and he had a broad sort of like anti-interventionist, anti-imperialist perspective. But he didn't have like, he didn't deploy or invest any resources in developing a broad foreign policy thing. He had nobody in his shop who was interested in foreign policy.
Oh no, we're just going to ship it out to West Exec. We're going to outsource it.
Well, it's just not what he was focused on, because I think to a certain extent he thought like, I'm never going to be in a position to deal with it anyways. I know my broad principles, but he was more interested in specific domestic type of issues. I think Joe Biden, there's a whole bunch of stuff that he just doesn't have a strong opinion on. He has some broad.
But it's also because like the times have changed too. So his conditioning is not reflective of the crises that we're facing right now. And so he's had to actually shift into some more progressive policies that, you know, maybe 40 years ago when he first came into power.
But I also think that like the way you shift is just like, you're like, I don't have like a huge dog in this fight, but the people around me, they're telling me it's important to go that way. So, okay.
Right.
like, I mean, I think it's like that. There, you know, where you run into problems is when they do have a dog in the fight.
That's right.
And that's where the pressure, you know, that's where it starts to build.
Well, and the eviction stuff's really interesting because you're seeing a lot of like Democrats that come from big cities that may not always be progressive on a lot of issues, might be the progressive caucus, may not be, may side with Biden on stuff that most progressives wouldn't. But for like, you know, whether it's Israel or, you name it. Jimmy Gomez, for instance, showed up. He is from Los Angeles. He isn't the progressive caucus, but he's been more on foreign policy, pretty conservative, like fairly conservative. But he showed up to the fight for the eviction moratorium, ending the eviction, continuing the eviction moratorium, because he's a Los Angeles council member who represents a district that's like being deeply influenced. And this is, I think, what we're going to see is we're going to see more allies who are willing to oppose the president, which, I mean, Sam, you're old enough to remember that years ago, unless it came down, it was Barbara Lee opposing the Iraq War.
Yep. You broke up a little bit during that, but David Sirota is reporting that a real estate billionaire dumped $1 million into the House Dems super PAC and funneled big cash to Speaker Pelosi's political machine just before the moratorium eviction expired.
Which one?
I don't know who it is. I haven't read into the piece yet. People can check that out.
It's
all right.
important.
Sam's butt joint. Can I ask everyone on the Majority Report family to go sign my change.org petition to add Cuomo sexuality to the DSM-6? Emma Posit Fund. Hello, Sam and Emma. Can I get a shofar from my grandfather who passed away today at the age of 93? He was strong and of sound mind until the very end. Rest in power. Sorry to hear that, but it sounds like he lived a good, long life. Josh from Chicago. There is a name, Jumaane Williams, for governor. No, I don't know. Really cool. When is Cuomo's term up? It's 2022. Never mind. Thank you. Dude guy, pal. I never do this, but my God, Nomiki just makes things up, and it's getting really frustrating listening to her every Tuesday. What do you mean she makes things up?
What am I making up? And that's really interesting after the last comment. Tell me, what was I making up? Thank you.
Maybe we'll get an IM.
We'll see. Animus. I think it's important to remember all these politicians, AG, et cetera, who posture as champions of women are not. There are other women who these politicians have been willing to bulldoze. These are not heroes. They are willing to silence women facing similar or worse circumstances when it's convenient for them. I think this is important to keep a level head about this and remember that it's not easy for nameless women who have been silenced to watch the people that silenced them be held up as so-called heroes. Just a reminder to not see the picture in black and white. This is politics. Okay, I'm not 100% sure I understand that, but I appreciate the sentiment. Craven Moorhead. Is it just me, but I cannot see what Governor Cuomo did that was so wrong? Snooze and surrendered. Voted for Nita this morning. I was the only person at my polling place and heard from a handful of friends that this was their experience too. Oy. I don't know. I don't know the dynamic enough in that district to know, like, does a low turnout help Nina? Does it not? There's no way to know, right? I mean,
I'd imagine probably not.
You think not?
I actually don't think it's either or. I think it's one of these, it's such a high profile race, and Marcia Fudge had been in office for so long that, like, it's not like she's sneak attacking. Like, it's not like, you know, Joe Crowley, who was out to lunch, and AOC could come in and out organize. Like, they know Nina Turner's coming. They know, you know, they know that everybody is coming into town and, like, is going to organize, and they have to put the money in. So I think it's actually a more traditional race, like, in terms of,
it's hard to know.
Yeah, it's very hard.
Okay, we're going to do 5 more of these, and then we're going to get out of here. Ryan Cole. Isn't all protest performative to some extent? Oh, you just both said that. Never mind. We get a lot of those people who are just like jumping the gun.
Oh, it's just our takes are so hot. They got to get them while they're hot.
Fluffing aggrievement pillow. The purpose of the Democratic Party is to neutralize the politics to its left and to coalesce and collapse to the politics of its right. I don't think that there is anybody who has a purpose of the Democratic Party.
Yeah, I think there's members of the leadership that have that purpose.
Yeah, I mean, but the Democratic Party does not exist in nature. It is just who the people are at that given moment.
It's not a naturally occurring element.
That is correct.
What are you talking about? I thought we were in charge, guys. We and MSNBC and, like, Joy Reid, I thought that was our role. Like, we were just, like, pulling the purse strings.
Sam, can you try and get Professor Steve Keen on the show to talk about the economics of climate change and or private debt? He's a great progressive economist in a similar space to Stephanie Kelton. Well, I think we've had Keen on. Yeah, I think it was probably like years and years ago. We should probably go back through our guest list. If you do about 3,000 shows, you could probably go back and say, like, you know what? I think it's okay to repeat. Yard sign Joyer. Oh, yard sign enjoyer. Vaush and Charlie Kirk are debating critical race theory on Tim Pool's show tonight. Any advice for everyone's favorite weird-looking incel degenerate? Also, do you have any advice for Vaush? Wear a mask. That would be the first move. That would be my advice.
Maybe it's virtual. It's probably virtual.
Is that possible? Tim Pool doesn't have internet in his studio.
Yeah, Vaush traveled there.
I would, if it's live, I would say to Vaush, like, you should definitely work in stuff from that Daily Beast article into the debate with Charlie Kirk.
Yes.
That's what I would do. Robo Gorka. I remain a paying member of the Majority Report, so y'all can just drop F-bombs live on the fun heft. Left is best.
Sorry.
And the final IM of the day. Let's see what we got here. I'm happy now. Hi, Sam. I'm a long hauler. Got COVID last October. Jeez. Got 2 blood clots, superficial, neuropathy, still numb. And in January, perforated colon. So 2 surgeries later, I'm still recovering. Thankfully, no brain fog. Love you much, Michelle. Oh my gosh, I'm so sorry to hear that. Hang in there. Wear a mask, folks, when you go inside. We're still not out of the woods here. Matt, Bradley, Emma, Nomi, good job today. See you folks tomorrow.
It might take all the strength I got to get to where I want, but I know somehow I'm gonna get there. I wasn't looking when I just got caught between the truth and the lie bar, but finding out won't make me feel any better. Yeah, I know the clock is ticking, but the meds are gonna kick in, and my pilot light's shining bright. I get somewhere that